And we are live again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Deal Flow Live. This is the show where we talk about all things deal making. We talk about buying and selling businesses from both the seller perspective and the buyer perspective. And often, like we're going to do today, we look at live listings of businesses that are actively for sale and we give our opinion on them. And Ryan, today we've got an HVAC business here in Orlando that we're looking at. Tell us a little bit about the background here and why we're looking at it.
So it hits a lot of our boxes, and like we always say, it's a long-standing business, meaning 20 years or more. It's got good financials. It's priced very fairly. It's got decent sales, decent SDE. So on paper, just on the numbers aspect, it looks very good. And as you scroll down, though, you see that there's only 2 employees. So you're like, okay, that's a little bit light, but we'll look down. Reason for selling: retirement. So everything that we've ever talked about on this show, as everybody knows, that's the common reason. These are the numbers we like to see. We would assume this. We would call this a fair thing. He's taking home 130, selling for 175. At this size of business, that's about, I'd say that's appropriate. You're a little over a 1x, so that's about where you're at. But the 2 employees, that's where you have to kind of raise your eyebrows. So like we always say, you buying a business or you buying another job. You can do either. You just have to be very certain about it. So if we scroll down here.
And one thing I'll say, like some context I'm hoping to bring into this conversation today is, so I own part of a company that is in the HVAC field. It's not like, it's not like this company. It's not like doing like service, maintenance, and replacement of HVAC, like AC systems. It's a more of a like a HVAC cleaning company. So we're looking at buying a company like this, and I could say right away, one of the companies that we're looking at buying is about 2.5 times the size of this one from the standpoint of sales. And I know, and they run pretty lean, and it's similar thing, 2 employees, it's an owner and 2 technicians. It is very dependent on the owner. Now it's doing a lot more money, but it is very, very dependent on the owner. He's doing all of he's doing all of the like managing in the field, and he's doing all the sales.
Mm-hmm.
He has all the relationships. So that's the first thing that kind of stands out when I look at something like this.
I would, I agree. It's the things that you only learn when you start working with businesses like this is what does this business entail off the rip, essentially. And I mean, all the stuff that we hear, we see all the good stuff is that he's 1099ing subcontractors. Apparently the way he's running it is that he basically gets a job in, he's, gets to work. He sets a time and a date. He tells the subcontractors where to go. He is, according to this, he's just supervising, making sure the work's getting done. And that's kind of how he's doing it. And it's one of those ones where it's likely going to be a situation of I have more business than I have time to run the business. Because an HVAC this size, that's every single story, and it's true. Usually they're getting calls off. The phone is ringing all day because there's people who need this stuff and not enough people to fix it. So, but that's the thing, is that you do need to know what you're looking at, or you need to have somebody who does know what they're looking at. And when you see a business like this and it looks like a unicorn almost, you got to be really reading between those lines and understanding, like, is this an entrepreneur business or is this a tradesperson business? This is a tradesperson business if I've ever seen one.
It is. Other thing that I want to spot out here that's kind of interesting, like you got to think about like how you get paid on jobs when you look at buying a business. You've got to look at, because let's say Ryan were to buy a business like this, right? Let's say he's putting maybe, for example, half of the price down. So let's go back to the numbers. Let's say, okay, 175K. Let's say he's putting like half that down. What is that, like 85?
That's about 87,500.
87.5 or so down. And he's got, let's say, another 87.5. So 5 divided by 2. You nailed it, by the way, 87.5. Let's say he's financing the 87.5 over, let's call it 3 years. So he's paying a little over 29 grand a year to the owner to pay the remainder of that half. And so if that's, monthly installments, it's about $2,400 a month that he's going to be paying. Business is profiting 131, and that's without factoring in interest. So let's say 24 grand, or no, 2,500 a month or so.
Yeah, because
we're going to 26.
Assume an SBA loan, so let's assume SBA rates, so we'll do 10%.
So 131 a year, 131, 213 is what it's doing a year. Let's say that continues. So it's making about just under 11 grand a month. And if you're paying, let's call it 2,600 a month. So you're left with about 8,300 in cash flow every month. But we see here, there's a 60-40 split residential commercial. In this case, that's a good thing. Now, if we saw, and I'll talk about why in a second. If we saw it even just the opposite way, if it was 60-40 and most of it was commercial, all of a sudden I'm a little concerned here because there's very busy seasons for HVAC and there's very non-busy seasons. It's already something you have to think about. If you're paying $2,600 a month in seller financing to pay this business back, you're going to have some months that are really good during the summer when it's like the busiest. You're also going to have winter months that aren't quite as busy. Mm-hmm. So that's already something to think about. Now, if you're also thinking about these commercial jobs, you don't get paid right away for those a lot of times. You might have net terms where, for us, for example, we usually collect a deposit on the bigger jobs. Deposits less than half. I won't get into the too particular on it. The deposit's usually less than half, and then we get paid later down the road after the work has been completed, and usually have net terms on that. It might be like net 30 or something. So it takes a while to get paid on commercial work sometimes. The more large it is, the bigger the commercial work is. So if you think about, fronting the labor of the job and also the monthly installments, and then also you might not get paid for 45, 60 days from closing the job to doing the work and finishing and everything, all of a sudden you might have some areas where you get really tight. And it's something to think about. If this was like an 80% commercial job, all of a sudden that gets very dangerous. So if you're looking into buying a business particularly like this, it's actually quite a benefit that it's 60% residential and 40% commercial. Both are good types of work, and it's good to have a mix, I think. But the more residential, the better here, because usually you're collecting the money the day of or, shortly after for residential jobs.
Yeah, we know for a fact that where this is located, Winter Garden, as an area heavily residential and got a decent amount of construction happening very close to it. So it should have a lot of potential, but the more homes you can get into and the more just people who want to call you as their first call, or people who want to be on plans or just regular maintenance, the more you can smooth out that curve when you look at what you're making month to month, the more you can actually predict your year in advance.
That's right. So what else is going on here? Loyal customer base throughout the local area. They use a single service van to transport the tools and equipment to job sites. I'm immediately wondering, okay, multiple 1099 helpers and subcontractors, how do they do multiple jobs at the same time if they've got one van? Sounds like they can only do one job at a time. That means if you buy this, you might have to invest into more vans, right?
Oh, immediately.
In our company, I got involved fairly recently. All of a sudden, we're getting a lot more work. We're having to buy more vehicles, and that's a cost we have to think about, which eats into your profit momentarily. You're building for the future. But these are things you have to think about, especially if you're buying a business to create cash flow to potentially replace a W-2 income or something like that.
It's a business that I think ticks a lot of boxes on paper, but when we dig into it with what we know and how our experiences have been in the industry, you find that this is a business where if you're not somebody who is entrenched in HVAC, maybe not a great buy. And maybe even if you are entrenched in HVAC, maybe you want to have some cash already saved up beyond the payment to put towards that next vehicle, because maybe you do see this.
I would say definitely you do, because you're probably going to start spending on things like maybe upgrading the website, maybe doing some
Assuming there is one.
advertising. That's assuming there is one. You might have to pay someone to build one from scratch, or take some time to build one from scratch, or pay to have someone help you. You might have to start spending on ads and test a little bit and make some mistakes. You're going to need working capital as well. So you got to be thinking about these things.
I think the two people that would want to buy this business is a tradesperson who wants to step out onto their own and wants a bit of security when they step out. Or I think an existing HVAC company is looking to expand its footprint, services, and just wants to get that little bit of extra push. This is reasonable. I mean, if you price the truck and the book, you're probably coming in close. And if they do already have a solid contract set up, I mean, that's also that they didn't say is how long are the contracts. That 60-40 split, is that made of long-term stuff? Is that just regular, just like one-time calls? What does that mix look like in detail? I think that's really the two people that would buy this business, not somebody who's looking to break free, unless you're also going to HVAC school and you just want to get into it. But definitely a business where there's a lot of potential upside. But if you get in without the right education, you'll be upside down in no time.
Another thing I'll say, because you were talking about the contracts there, and no disrespect to anyone running a business like this, it's not easy to just run a business like this for 22 years and to build something like this. By no means easy. One thing I will say, though, is a business this small, kind of set up the way it looks like it's set up, I would be very shocked and surprised if they have at any point built this with intentionality to sell. So I say that to say, with a business like this, most of the time, the contracts within the business are a little shaky. Like there's probably not any kind of contract for a lot of these commercial clients. And if there is, it's probably not under like great terms. It's probably not for very long. That's, again, if they have contracts at all. On the residential side, forget about it. If they might have like some maintenance agreements with customers, but there's probably no like contractual obligation to them. It's probably more just like a handshake agreement with people who like the owner of this business, just based on what I've seen in businesses this size. And what you inherit with maintenance agreements that have been so commonplace with HVAC businesses like this. So you inherit all this obligation that can cause issues with scheduling. Because if you're obligated to go out and service this customer every year, you have to be thinking about, okay, what if you've got 300 of those? We've looked at businesses around this size in HVAC that, like, we looked at one that had like 300 of those. And all of a sudden, when summer came around, he hadn't really planned out that well. He would have to be servicing all of these contracts that were just flat controlled costs. He wasn't going to get a big sale on, but he had to go out and service them or have someone else service them. He had to pay someone to go service them. And those caused him to not be able to service another customer that was a new paying customer during that time. So you inherit all that obligation too, and that can actually be a pretty bad thing sometimes.
Oh yeah, it can really spiral. I mean, like you said, it's not that they did this intentionally. It's just that they built the business that worked for them. And I think most people don't start a business to sell it, or they're not like, how will this look when I sell it? They're building a business to put food on the table and supply for their family. Like that's what they did. And they did it very successfully for 20 years. Now that it's getting to this point, we've seen a lot of sellers now that we know, or business in the market, where we'll know how long they've been on the market because we'll look at their Google page and they'll have a brand new website and they'll have reviews that are maybe a month or two old and just a whole bunch from just all at once of like different stuff within like a day or two. And it's like, okay, they're really trying to get the case for, oh no, we can demand this price because we do have a website, we do have a price tag. So I think that could be a situation with this one, but odds are you're going to have to do a lot of detangling if you did end up going with this one.
Yeah, and you make a good point there. The reason that they're doing that, the reason that they're like sometimes making this sprint to have some website presence to make it look like there's an established brand is because at the end of the day, when you buy something this small, if the owner's not going to still be involved, you are kind of just buying a list of contacts, a lead funnel that may or may not work well, and some employees that may or may not stick around.
I mean, the two employees could be husband, wife. That could be the two employees, husband and wife, which we've seen all the time. nothing wrong with it. It's just like, you're not actually getting the two employees with the business. They're both leaving once it's bought. So
That's very commonplace. Like, you would not believe how many of these little HVAC businesses are just like, it's a
literally
guy
mom and pop.
running the business and then his wife that like get on the phone with the guy and he's like, it's a point of pride that like his wife does everything, which is amazing. Like, that's awesome. Like, you got to be a lucky guy to have a situation like that and have a wife that like helps you build a business like that. But it's so often that they're talking about that, and immediately I see the writing on the wall that if someone was to buy this business and both of them leave, the wife was, for no money aside from just the owner benefits that come as a couple out of the business, but for no salary whatsoever, was working like not 2 jobs in the business, not 3, more like 5 jobs that would all have to be replaced. And all of a sudden the business just doesn't even really work if she's not in it, because you can't really hire people to take that back on. And I've seen that again and again and again. Like, she's the customer service rep, she's the marketing person, she's like handling all these little menial tasks, she's a business development, like she's doing all these things, she's the finances, and then a lot of times the guy is like supervising everyone. Both very, very pivotal roles, and if you lose those all of a sudden, like, you just don't really have a business.
Yeah.
So these are the types of things, like, the idea of like buying these very small businesses is very romanticized, and sometimes it can be a good thing depending on the structure, but these are the kinds of things you have to be thinking of and kind of have plans for.
I agree. Yeah, it's all too common, and it's a really sweet thing. It's awesome to see. It's just, there's going to be a bit of a transition more than likely, unless they were the outlier that really did prepare and kind of organize everything in an easy to transfer manner. But yeah, I would say overall that this is a C- for somebody who's coming in as a non-technically knowledgeable person. I would stray away from this one. I think if you have HVAC knowledge and a background, this is definitely a B2B plus. And if you're a company looking to acquire in the space and you already have a presence in this industry, this is probably a solid B plus, because if they have the clientele that they do, rolling this into your book would be fairly simple. Rerouting to your website and just kind of taking it over might actually not be that big of a deal for you.
Sure. What I would also be thinking, though, if I'm a business that's established, is like, how much of this, like, this down payment is pretty large, right? They're saying down payment of full payment. I'd be thinking, if I have to pay 175 grand right now all at once, I could probably influence the growth of my business more than 131 grand in profit.
Yeah.
With that 175 grand. And so that's what I'd be thinking as someone in this position. I'd also be thinking I'm probably overpaying for a lot of this, like the 17 grand in FF&E, the 8,500 in inventory. That's probably marked up. So I'm probably overpaying for stuff. And I might be overpaying for some junky stuff too, like trucks that are kind of old and have some problems. That's kind of what I would be I'm guessing the 17 grand is the van that they mentioned. I'm thinking stuff like that if I'm already established. Where it gets interesting is if you can get some better terms on this. Like, if you can get some kind of like financing arrangement as part of the 175, all of a sudden maybe it makes sense, because rather than deploying 175 all at once, maybe I'm spreading it out over a few years and getting an extra funnel of customers in the meantime. I would give this a D plus. The reason is I know too much about how these are often structured, and it would take such a particular type of person to be able to step into something like this. I can just it has extreme owner dependence written all over it. It's someone who's retiring, and they're probably they've always just done almost everything. Now, there's information that we don't have here that could prove me wrong, but that's my initial opinion of it.
Yeah, this would sway. I think this is what you're saying is this would sway a lot of people away from even asking for more information. If they knew a little bit about the industry, they might not even bother because they're like, this is when you're, it depends. I mean, there's always a deal to be made, but do you want to bother with a deal on something this big, which is not really that big?
Sure. When there's many, many listings out there, do you want to go through the trouble of trying to negotiate with someone who's saying, I want all the money up front and not listing any alternatives for financing? It's an important question. Maybe they haven't seen the reality of the situation enough yet. Who knows? But
possibly.
Yeah, you just never know. But that's kind of the grade I would give this one. It's a tough one. Like you'd have to basically become 100% absorbed in this business as an owner. And I think, your 175 could probably buy you more business for a better price.
Okay, well, there you have it. D+ from you, C-, I think in general for me, although averaging out maybe to a B- with where I think a tradesperson who wants to do this, or
Sure.
maybe even a roll up with some pricing could make it a B+. But I think we had a pretty good scale there.
Yeah, definitely an interesting business. I mean, getting involved in HVAC businesses is, it's a trend for a reason. They're great businesses. I especially know that now that I'm in the industry. Got like an actual like ownership stake in a company that is in this space. It is a fantastic business to be in. Many of these businesses just are not structured very well to be transferred. So you got to be very choosy with the ones that you do get involved in. But altogether, it's a viable option for certain people. Any final comments on this one?
I think if you have the cash, you have the knowledge, and you have the time to get in there, and you want to get stuck in the weeds, doing the work to kind of get this thing to a systemized approach, kind of beefing it up a bit with some more employees, you could easily take a $175K purchase, assuming without any sort of modification to the price. I mean, maybe more of a 150 at that rate. But you could take that, and in 5-6 years, it could be close to 500,000. It could be close to 700,000. If you make the structures at all nice and pretty, somebody bigger will be more attracted if you wanted to sell it to come along and buy it.
It's true. Well, this has been Deal Flow Live. We will be covering another different type of residential service business on the next episode. So stay tuned for that one. We've got something really interesting picked out. Something I also have had a really in the weeds type of experience with lately, and can give a lot of insight on that we are excited to talk about. In the meantime, if you've been tuning into this episode, stick around next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the next one. We're excited to see you on every week at that same time. And if you find Ryan or I on LinkedIn, Ryan Santo MBA on LinkedIn, Brody Vincent MBA on LinkedIn, shoot us a message and let us know what kind of business you want us to cover. We'll be on the lookout. And if it's something that we can find a good listing for, or if you've got a deal already that you want us to look over, we're happy to do it. And if you were thinking about buying a business like this, tune in every week just to get some insights like this. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.